Astronauts completed a spacewalk to prepare the International Space Station for a new set of solar arrays, as NASA officials assure American astronaut Mark Vande Hei will return to Earth in a Soyuz spacecraft with 2 Russian cosmonauts. Meanwhile, America's Broomsticks are gearing up to launch multiple crewed trampoline missions to the ISS, as Moonbound Broomsticks continue being tested and developed for upcoming flights. All that on this week's Human Spaceflight News Rundown, but first, be sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss another video. On March 15, 2022, NASA astronauts Kayla Barron and Raja Chari, 2 ISS Expedition 66 flight engineers, performed a spacewalk outside the orbiting outpost. The 2 spacewalkers left the Quest airlock at 12:12 UTC to begin what would be a 6-hour, 54-minute spacewalk. The purpose of this outing was to install a solar array modification kit on the 3A power channel's mast canister, located on the S4 truss segment. S4 itself is located on the starboard side of the space station's integrated truss assembly. NASA said this spacewalk is essentially a mirror of the one that occurred in mid-September 2021 on the P4 truss segment. This was the 4th of 6 kits installed over the last couple of years to allow for new rollout solar arrays to be attached to the ISS. Called iRosa, the first 2 were installed in June 2021. The next 2 are expected to be added later this year after being delivered by a SpaceX Cargo Dragon. These new arrays are being added because the 8 legacy solar array wings are beginning to lose efficiency, as expected, because of their age. The 35-meter-long arrays were brought to the ISS in pairs on space shuttle missions between 2000 and 2009. They each had about a 15-year design life. The new 19-meter-long arrays are being deployed over the existing arrays, so they will lose some power-generating capacity. However, once all 6 iRosa devices are installed, the power-producing capacity by the US segment is set to increase to about 215 kilowatts, from roughly 160 kilowatts before the upgrades began. Following this installation, the astronauts began preparing battery charge-discharge units for future robotics work. This involved removing and restraining thermal covers, as well as breaking and resetting the torque of several bolts. With the duo working at breakneck speed, there was enough time for a quick get-ahead task to be performed, which involved the spacewalkers checking access and clearance for patch panels under the alpha magnetic spectrometer. The spacewalk ended at 1906 UTC, concluding Barron's second outing and Chari's first. It was also the 247th spacewalk in support of ISS assembly and maintenance since 1998. Another spacewalk is planned for March 23rd and is expected to see a medley of maintenance tasks performed. But before the next spacewalk, 3 new ISS crew members are expected to launch to the outpost. Soyuz MS-21 is scheduled to launch at 15:55 UTC March 18th from Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan. Aboard will be 3 Russian cosmonauts, Oleg Artemyev, Denis Medvedev, and Sergei Korsakov. Notably, this is the first mission to the ISS with 3 Russian cosmonaut crew members. All previous Soyuz missions to the ISS have had at least 1 NASA astronaut, an international astronaut, or a spaceflight participant. The trio is expected to be the first to dock with the Prichal module some 6 hours later. They are set to replace the outgoing Soyuz MS-19 crew, which includes Russian cosmonauts Anton Shkaplerov and Pyotr Dubrov, and NASA astronaut Mark Vande Hei. Dubrov and Vande Hei have been in space since April 9, 2021, while Shkaplerov has been in space since October 2021. Vande Hei in particular just recently surpassed NASA astronaut Scott Kelly's record of the single longest spaceflight by a NASA astronaut, 340 days. Vande Hei is expected to reach 355 days when he returns to Earth on March 30th, landing in Kazakhstan. Soyuz MS-19's departure will officially mark the beginning of Expedition 67 on the ISS. With Russia's unprovoked invasion of Ukraine in February 2022, there has been speculation that Vande Hei might be left behind on the space station as a reaction to the numerous sanctions imposed on the Russian Federation by the international community. These fears have stemmed from a video put out by Director General of the Russian State Space Corporation Roscosmos, Dmitry Rogozin, that showed the astronaut being left behind on the US side of the space station. The video proceeds to show the Russian segment separate and the US side falling away, presumably into the atmosphere. The video was considered a joke by those who made it, albeit not a very funny one. Rhetoric aside, NASA has continued to say that everything is operating as usual regarding the ISS program partnership with Russia. There have been no changes, including to the return of the Soyuz MS-19 crew. according to ISS program manager Joe Montalbano in a news conference on March 14th.
I can tell you for sure Mark is coming home on that Soyuz. We are in communication with our Russian colleagues. There's no fuzz on that. The reality is Mark Vande Hei is coming home on March 30th with Anton and Pyotr, period.
He also went into the various reasons why a Russia ISS split is not likely to occur. I did a whole video over that, which you can see right here. I'll also have a link in the description below. A few hours after Soyuz MS-19 lands, SpaceX is set to launch the all-private Axiom Space AX-1 mission to the ISS with Axiom Space astronaut Michael Lopez Alegria and spaceflight participants Larry Connor, Mark Pathy, and Eaton Stibb. I plan on doing a full video over this 10-day mission. Expect that next week sometime. After the AX-1 mission, NASA is set to swap its crew on the ISS. SpaceX's Crew 4 Dragon mission is scheduled to launch on April 15th. Aboard will be NASA astronauts Kjell Lindgren, Bob Hines, and Jessica Watkins, as well as European Space Agency and Italian astronaut Samantha Cristoforetti. They are set to replace the Crew 3 astronauts, NASA's Raja Chari, Caleb Barron, and Tom Marshburn, and the European Space Agency's Matthias Maurer, who have been in space since November 2021. Crew 3 is expected to return to Earth, splashing down off the coast of Florida no earlier than April 21st. Finally, as if it wasn't busy enough on the US side of the space station, Boeing and NASA have penciled in May 20th for the second uncrewed test flight of the company's Starliner spacecraft. Starliner's OFT-2 mission was expected to launch last August, but an issue with thrusters in the service module delayed the launch. The service module was ultimately replaced. This is a redo of the first uncrewed orbital flight test in December 2019, which barely scraped its way into orbit and was not able to dock to the ISS. Starliner is expected to eventually send crew to the ISS to complement the capabilities of SpaceX's Crew Dragon. Assuming all goes well with OFT-2 and an upcoming crewed test flight, the first operational crew rotation mission is expected to occur in the second half of 2023. Before moving on, if you're enjoying these news rundown videos, let me know by launching that like button into orbit. Let's wrap things up with some imagery and video of the crawler transporter being moved into the vehicle assembly building at Kennedy Space Center in Florida in advance of the first rollout of a fully stacked Space Launch System rocket. The Artemis 1 SLS rocket is being transported to the pad to perform a series of tests culminating in a wet dress rehearsal, a mock countdown and fueling of the rocket all the way to just before engine ignition. Depending on when you watch this, the SLS could already be at the pad. Rollout is slated for 2100 UTC March 17th or about 5 p.m. Eastern Time. NASA expects the roll to last about 11 to 12 hours in order to reach Launch Complex 39B, which is located nearly 7 kilometers away from the VAB. Assuming all goes well with the roll and initial checks, NASA said the wet dress rehearsal could occur as early as April 3rd. If the test goes according to plan, the vehicle will then be transported back to the VAB and readied for the actual launch of Artemis 1, currently not likely before June of 2022. Artemis 1 is the first large mission of the Artemis program, which aims to return humans to the moon for the first time in more than a half century, and do it in a way that is sustainable and permanent. If you want to learn more about the Artemis 1 mission and the rest of the Artemis program, including how SpaceX's Starship fits in, you can check out this video right here. Thanks again for watching, and until next time, ad Astra.